Nisha, you can start.
Okay. Hello, welcome to the second day of the Harper Collins Children's Books Festival 2022. Today we have with us a very special author, Ilina Singh. She has written The Gutsy Girls of Science, which explores the contribution of remarkable Indian women scientists who've been botanists, mathematicians, physicists, chemists, and much more. This book is a celebration of their lives and the wonderful world of science. Ilina is an author, writer, and coder who loves science. Her writing journey started with small stories that she sent to children's sections in newspapers. She was one of the winners of the Write India contest run by the Times of India and judged by Ruskin Bond. She went on to win the national essay competition run by UNESCO and Takhte twice. Her essays are now part of the two books containing the winning essays. Her book, The Gutsy Girls of Science, was published by Harper Collins in partnership with UNESCO. Ilina is also the youngest woman of science to be featured in UNESCO's A Braided River, the Universe of Indian Women in Science. Ilina will be in conversation with Ms. Neeti Behel, who is an educator in the Sri Ram School for the last 24 years. She has done her master's in mathematics and a bachelor's in education from Delhi University. She has held the positions of key activity coordinator, academic coordinator in the past, and is currently the head of the mathematics department. She is also Ilina's class teacher, and we thought she would be the perfect woman of science to lead today's discussion. Over to Ilina and Neeti ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction.
Thank you. Namaste, everyone. Welcome, Ilina. So it's remarkable. It's the most reward for any teacher to know when a student makes a mark for herself or himself and achieves success in their endeavors. And today is that day for me when, as Ilina's class teacher and as a maths teacher, I have got the privilege and the honor to interview her for her exemplary work. So welcome, Ilina, to this conversation that we are going to have for the next 20-25 minutes, and would definitely want to delve deeper and know the process, the journey of becoming an author for you. So I've always seen you your head buried into a book and reading all the time, through the day, whenever you can. And books are your best friends, all of us can make out. So now you've become a published author. So tell us a little about your journey, what inspired you to write this book, and how important are books for children? Any specific books that you thought were inspirational for you and made a huge impact on you?
So honestly, I think most of the credit for my early reading habits, as well as just the encouragement for writing, goes to my parents. Since I was like a young girl, they cut the cable of the house and just removed the TV. So the only thing I could do to occupy my time was read books. And I think that just instilled a love of literature for me from a very, very young age. And, that kind of carried forward to writing, which I think is very important for me too. Because, to me, books have always shown that it can open doors to different worlds. And, initially, I really didn't have much of a connection. I really didn't have much of an idea, but with so much support from so many different sources, I was able to get, collaboration. I was able to come up with an amazing idea. And I realized that truly books and stories rule societies. And I think a few of the books that really left an impression in me would be, Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Because not only is his humor incredible and probably shaped my own sense of humor from a very young age, he also has this really interesting spin and perspective on society that allowed me and really taught me to think out of the box.
Great, wonderful. And what inspired you to write this book in particular?
So the inspiration for this book actually came when I was choosing my subjects in school. I decided I want to get into the science stream. But when I was looking for role models, when I was, looking for women who had succeeded in this field I was choosing, I realized very few of them were like me. Indian, brown skin, female. And that was when I realized that there's this huge gap that we have in our role models and in the people we look up to, where Indian women of science are almost missing from the field. And so I decided to initially paint portraits of these women, and I got overwhelmingly positive feedback. So that's when the idea was born, and I got to writing poems and prose and autobiographies. And it's just been so amazing.
It's been amazing reading the book as well, how you beautifully interweave the portraits and the activities that you've put in are so exciting for any maybe student your age would definitely want to pick up the book and read it. It's not just plain text, it's pictures, it's portraits made by you, so that creative aspect of you also. All right, so this is your debut book. As a young author, do you face any hurdles, any piece of advice that you would want to share with young budding authors like you?
So while I knew my idea was powerful and that there was a gap in most schools and most educational institutions about how we portrayed female scientists, I realized that there was a slight challenge in execution where I didn't want it to turn out into this really dry, slightly boring, text-heavy book that would not interest me as a young girl choosing science. So what I did was through various inspirations and through various activities, I tried to make this book as engaging for young people as I possibly could. And I think getting UNESCO on board as a partner was really just a blessing. Mr. Ford, he guided me, he mentored me, and I think he gave me the confidence that I needed to put my work and put my ideas out there. And my advice to budding authors would be to, first of all, ask why this book and why them. Because if you're not passionate about the topic, if you're not, if it doesn't come from your heart, I don't think you'll be able to do that well. So you need to ensure that whatever you're writing for or whatever art you're making, you really need to be very passionate about it.
Absolutely, and that does come out through your book. That's you were talking about your inspirations. So apart from family and how you've been into reading, any particular role that your school has played in, to making you a voracious reader first and you an author?
So I think really the school's environment has really guided me and aided me, because not only do we have wonderful libraries, both for senior and junior school, but I think the attitude of the teachers and the staff was also amazing, because, I have this slightly bad habit that I don't want most people to emulate, but I do end up reading books in class sometimes. And while you would expect teachers to be really annoyed because I was not paying that much attention to class, most teachers were really nice and sweet about it. And while they did encourage me to read, they also, ensured that I would focus. So I think it was just an environment that allowed me to grow both as a person and as a reader. And another thing was that, whenever I'd go up to a teacher and maybe ask her for out of syllabus book recommendations, all of the teachers in school were really engaging, and they'd always, make time and set apart time for my queries. And that just gave me a lot of confidence to grow as a person.
Great. We've also seen your lateral thinking, your out of the box hilarious comments. And one off late that I remember is when we were talking about excuses made by students in class, you in particular said that my boa constrictor chewed up my lesson or my assignment. So yes, that spark of creativity and wittiness definitely comes through. Okay, tell us about your writing process. How long did it take for you to write the book and your entire journey of, how you wrote the book, how it came out finally?
So my book writing started during the lockdown, and it was a very high stress time. And so I think in a way, writing this book and making the portraits was a bit of an outlet for me to calm down in a world gone crazy. I think it took around a year and a half to get the writing done. And then after that, it was mostly the planning process and finalizing the manuscripts, and Harper Collins was really helpful throughout the entire process. So kudos to them. And really, I just think that it was like a very unique time in my life because I had so much time set apart, not just in school, but also, the commute time was cut down. I had a lot of free time and I was searching for a distraction almost. So I was able to really channel all of my energy into this book and into this project. And it was a surprisingly productive period of my life.
Great, that's wonderful. For a young girl like you, where, for the millennials, it's very difficult to say that they can manage their time effectively, or they're so humble and they don't move around with a chip on their shoulder. You will be humble, and with the exemplary work that you've done, it just doesn't reflect in your persona at all. So how do you manage your time? How were you able to balance everything? And again, how did it help you in your research process?
So I think, again, credit definitely goes to my parents for keeping me on track and helping me, balance academics and this project. Because there were times where, I'd either get lost in my book and not study enough for my exams, or, it was nearing exam time and then I'd just slightly shift my attention from this book. But I think the main thing is that you have to be your own motivation, right? You have to keep in mind that you have these deadlines with this project and these deadlines with this project, and manage them both, because at the end of the day, you're the only one who can control your own actions. So I think there was a lot of discipline involved, and this entire project, I think, just also helped me learn a lot more about how to manage my time and when to focus on project A and when to focus on project B. It was definitely a learning experience.
Sounds very when you're saying it, but not not that easy to do. So commendable how you balanced and manage everything. Tell us about your research process a little.
Yes. So as a schoolgirl studying science, I'd noticed that I was one of the very few girls in my maths and engineering society, or in my computer class. But when we went over to the slightly more soft core subjects like art, the ratio would kind of switch to the opposite, where there'd be very few boys and a lot more girls. And I also realized that most textbooks, especially maths textbooks with numericals and word sums, they'd show whenever we were doing, let's say, interest, and someone had to go to the bank and make a withdrawal or a deposit, it would almost always be a man doing that. Whereas in word sums that required you to go grocery shopping or maybe just handling household bills, it would almost always be a woman doing that job. And I realized that these gender roles and these stereotypes have kind of been enforced from a very young age. And so I felt that my book should reach out to younger children so that we can stop these bad habits when they're being learned. So there were some data points supporting it, of course, but I think most of my research was from a very personal and slightly anecdotal angle almost. And of course, science education needs to be made more fun and engaging. And I think Shriram School was one of my main inspirations in this, with the math lab and fun activities that the teachers always organize to get interest and gain interest in subjects that might otherwise be a little bit dense and hard to understand. But mostly it was also based on subject choices and when subjects would be chosen and career levels. So like 17 is when most people will make their final decision of what careers to choose, what subjects to choose, and which colleges to go to. And 70% of the future jobs will be science-based. So I thought it was imperative to have something that was aimed towards, teens, that would allow them to make really well-informed choices of how to choose science and when to choose science, so that there'd be, more women on the table in future, because science is the future.
Absolutely, absolutely. Agree completely with you. What's in the pipeline? What are your future plans? Do you intend to write another book or something else? Do share.
I do have plans for another book, but it's not been finalized completely yet. I'm working on a book about, Indian goddesses and how women in their daily lives kind of tend to emulate some of these qualities that we ascribe to goddesses. And I'm also hoping for it to be a mix of art and literature.
So can we assume that women will continue to be the center of all your books?
I think so, yeah.
Yes. All right. Okay. So who's the most inspiring woman from your book?
To me, it would be Janki Amal, right? Because while all the scientists in my book are outstanding, they've accomplished so much, and they've been the first in their careers as Indian women to accomplish this, I feel that Janki Amal's story is really impressive, because she went against years and years of societal conditioning almost. Right? She refused to get married early. She chose to focus on her career, and she excelled in it, really. Right? For the longest time, India used to import sugarcane because Indian sugarcane wasn't sweet enough. But Janki Amal created a hybrid version that would grow in Indian climates and was sweet enough to produce sugar. And not only was she an amazing scientist, she was also very environmentally conscious. She was an activist. And she's one of the reasons why the Silent Valley of Kerala is still here with us today.
Great. Thank you. Good to know that. And one last question for you. What would you want to tell young girls who aspire to become authors? How to, create a correct amalgamation and creativity and get the right headway to start off something?
So I think this piece of advice would go not just to young authors, but to people everywhere aspiring for any career. But what I've learned through my journey is that you need to find the one thing that you both excel at and you love doing. And you just need to throw your all into it, because it's just practice, regular practice, and engagement. Those are the only two ways that you'll really succeed at something.
Great, great. Thank you. And it's been wonderful having this conversation with you, Ilina. Trust. So learned a lot from you, and kudos to you. May you have a long way, a good journey, a wonderful author, and may you write many, many inspiring books for all of us to read.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, Ilina.
Thank you, Neeti ma'am. We'll now move on to any questions we might have from the audience.
Yes, so thank you so much, Ilina. It was wonderful listening to you. And thank you, Neeti ma'am, for joining us. The conversation was really amazing. Such a young author and such focused work, really incredible. So Ilina, our audience wants to know a little bit more about you. And our first question is from Pari from Queen Mary School. She says, I want to become an astronaut. Please recommend few books to help me achieve my goal.
So I think in terms of astronomy, because it's also been a passion of mine, not just an astronaut, but really any field of study that requires looking into the space, into sky, I would recommend books by Stephen Hawking, because not only do they really engage with slightly complex topics and topics that are essential if you want to make your way into the field of physics, into the field of astronomy, but he also manages to break the topics down into really casual language. And, apart from a few terms that you need to know, it's really fascinating how he manages to take these really, really complex topics and turn them into something that, a class full of 8th graders could understand. So that's one author that I would always recommend to anybody. More specifically, his book, The Brief History of Time, for someone looking into space, looking into heavenly bodies. But he also has a very interesting series for young children that he has written along with his daughter, which is George's Space Adventures, I think, and the other one's called George's Treasure Hunt. And those kind of take really complicated astronomic topics like black holes or the birth and death of stars, and tell it from the perspective of a young child who's traveling through space using a supercomputer. So it's both really engaging and a very good base in astronomy. In fact, that's how I got to, cultivate my interest in astronomy.
So wow, that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Pari, for the recommendation. I'm sure Pari is listening to you and she's very happy to get those recommendations. So the next question is from Tanishk. He's from Air Force Group of Schools, and he wants to ask you, how many hours in a day do you read?
If you ask my mom, the answer will be too many, because I tend to get lost in books. But depending on how close I am to my school exams, because as a student, your entire schedule kind of revolves around your academic calendar, it can kind of range from 4 hours a week to like an hour and a half per week.
Okay, so you've already bifurcated your time. Really beautiful. Thank you so much. So the next question is from one of the parents, Ms. Jaya, and she wants to know from you how to involve kids in academics, hobbies, social and community activities.
So I think my best advice would be to, let people find their niche, like that one little topic that they're really into, and then let them branch out a little from there. Like my mom got me really interested in reading when she bought me different books on sciences and on astronomy, actually. It was like, the how-to books for slightly younger kids. And those are topics I was really interested in. So I just picked up reading really fast thanks to those books. So I think not just academically, but, any co-curricular activity as well. You need to find that one topic or one subject that you're really passionate about, and then relate that to everything else.
Wonderful. That's a wonderful advice. So I'm sure Ms. Jaya is happy. Yeah. So, okay. So one question from the audience is how to increase focus while reading?
So for me, I'm not quite sure if this is the best advice because, everyone reads and learns differently. But for me, what's always worked is that after I've read something, half an hour later, maybe an hour later, I'll just think back on it and try to remember what I was, try to see what I comprehended and see what I didn't, and go over the things I didn't completely understand the first time around. And that way, it's like a muscle you build. It's like something you exercise. It's over time, what you understand is going to be a lot more than what you don't understand. And slowly, you'll keep tipping the scales until you've basically got a lot of focus, got a lot of reading comprehension. And it's just a function of practice, in my opinion.
Sure. Thank you so much. That was a great advice. Okay. So Ayan is here with us and he has written, how did your teachers encourage you for reading? So did your teachers encourage you for reading? I have just heard that your mother inspired you for reading, right? So did your teachers also encourage you for reading?
Yes, ma'am, they absolutely did. And the first thing I think would be by not confiscating my books, because I've heard stories of it happening in a lot of schools where, if you're caught reading a book that's not related to the subject or to the textbook in class, some teachers will confiscate your books. But, in school, that's luckily never happened to me. And another way was that, once my teachers realized that I was very interested in books, and specifically in books that told stories from a really individual or personal level, they actually gave me multiple book recommendations. So especially in subjects like history or economics, like my economics teacher recommended multiple books to me, like Free Economics or Thinking Fast and Slow. And those have really actually helped me both get a grasp on the subject as well as broaden my reading horizons.
Okay, great. There's another question from Dhyuti, and she's asking, who is your inspiration and why?
Okay, that's, I have multiple people that I kind of look up to. But I think in this case, my greatest inspiration would be my father, because he, along with my mom, he really encouraged me to read. He actually gave me my first slightly wordy book that I'd read as a child, which was The Complete Works of Calvin and Hobbes, which I can now quote line by line. But he was really there for me, academically speaking. He also, kind of raised a bar that I'd look up to, that I want to think like this. I want to be like this. I want to be able to understand and grasp slightly mathematically challenging concepts like my dad does, etc., etc. So I think as a kid, both the openness that we had about discussing any topic and every topic, even if it's not related to the subject I was studying about or what I was talking about at the dinner table, and just flitting from different topics, kind of allowed me to express my creativity and express myself, and just helped me grow as a person.
Great. That's wonderful. And so what would be one message, Ilina, that you would want to give to the entire audience out here? So to the youngsters who maybe aspire to become authors, what would be one advice?
My one advice would be that, you always know more than you think you do. When I started out writing this book, I did not think I'd be able to become a published author. Actually, I didn't think I'd get as far as the vetting process. But I realized that, we tend to underestimate ourselves.
Yeah.
And what we have the capability to do, especially under pressure, is so much more than we actually think we can do. And so just my advice to everyone is to not let that hesitant voice in the back of your head kind of stop you from achieving your dreams.
Amazing. That's really great. So, Ilina, maybe you can think of becoming a motivational speaker as well one day, yeah? So great. Thank you so much. It was wonderful talking to you. I don't think so there are any questions. Audience, do you want to ask more questions? Do you want to talk to Ilina? If you want, we can unmute you. Or if there are any questions, we can have those questions addressed by Ilina. Anybody? So Namasri, I guess she wants to talk to you. Preeti, can we unmute her, please? Yes, Namasri.
Why do you like reading?
That's a great question. So actually, I really enjoy reading because it lets me experience different things and different points of views and different experiences while I'm still in the same room. So like I could be sitting in the library and I could be going on an adventure in space. I could be sitting there and reading about how the first bill was passed in the Indian Parliament. It's just a lot of different experiences you can learn, and a lot of information you can learn.
Okay. So our next question, Antra has also raised her hand. Antra, can you unmute yourself and ask your question, please?
Yes. So my question is, since how many years you are writing this book, and since how many years you are reading?
So like I said, I started reading as a very young child, and I'm not sure I can really measure the years, but it's definitely been over 10 since I started reading. And as for writing this book, it took me about a year and a half, and I started when the lockdown started in 2020. So it's been 2 years now since I started writing this book.
Great. Thank you, Antra. And thank you, Ilina, for answering that. And Tanya is curious to know, how old are you?
I'm 17 now. I was 16 when I finished working on this book and sent over the manuscript to Harper Collins.
Great. Any more questions, audience, children, parents, teachers? Any more questions for Ilina? Okay, Arya has raised her hand. Arya, okay, you can unmute yourself.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am. I am Arya Chauhan from the modern school. I love science, but I prefer books which are both interactive and a bit more filled with experiments and the reason that why, how, and where can we use them. And also, how did scientists innovate something and not their biography? Please refer some books for me too.
All right, so there are a bunch of different books that you can find in almost any shop, especially how it was made. I'm forgetting the name of the author, but also what's it. And those were books that were like really formational for me when I was growing up, because they really get into the small details and the nitty gritty of things and how they were made, and what process was followed and what the situation was like when the original invention was being made. And I'm not sure if the parents will be completely okay with this, but another recommendation I'd give for slightly humorous and in-depth details is the Horrible History series. They have a spin-off called Horrible Sciences, where they really give like slightly out there, but still very in-depth detailing of different experiments and different, especially in the bio field, different organisms and different kinds of bacteria, etc.
Well, thank you so much. Any more questions, audience? Anything, children, do you want to ask her? So any more questions? Okay, well then, so in the absence of any questions, Ilina will stop the session here. Thank you so much. It was wonderful having you here. You are such a sport and you've written really well. And yes, so you're very, very focused, and we must say that, and we must definitely, wish you all the very best for your future. Do well and keep writing. We will keep calling you. We'll keep calling you, and I'm sure you'll continue inspiring many, many children out here. So thanks a lot from the bottom of our heart. Thank you all of you who took out time for this session. So thank you so much for making this memorable, and stay tuned for more sessions. Enjoy your evening and stay safe, all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.